One common leaf. That is enough to shut down the nervous system. Why do we cultivate biological hazards in our own backyards? We assume domestication implies safety. That is a fatal error. Plants are distinct biological entities with a singular imperative: survival. To achieve this, they synthesize complex chemical arsenals designed to repel, burn, or kill potential consumers. The risk is not theoretical. Up close, the threat is often invisible. A seemingly harmless stem snaps. Milky sap oozes onto the skin. Within minutes, the dermis reddens, blisters, and burns. This is chemical warfare on a micro scale. On the surface, these are standard food sources. But inside the tissue, high concentrations of alkaloids and oxalates await. The margin for error is razor thin. 20 specific crops carry this hidden payload. These are not rare specimens from a remote jungle. They are the backbone of many agricultural plots. Ignorance here is a liability. A single mishandled root or seed pod can result in emergency medical intervention. The cost of cultivation includes the risk of toxicity. Identifying these threats is the primary step in risk management. Securing the perimeter against accidental ingestion by livestock or humans is the second. Understanding the toxicology is the only way to secure the harvest. One distinct botanical structure holds two opposing forces. Aesthetics serve a function, but chemistry dictates survival. The next specimen requires a rigorous handling protocol: rhubarb. In practical agronomy, this plant is valued for its durable, ruby red stalks. They provide essential acidity for preservation and caloric density in processed foods. But the solar collectors of the plant, the leaves, are strictly off limits. Why does a food crop produce a toxin? The plant defends its energy source against predation. The broad green canopy contains dangerous concentrations of oxalic acid. Upon closer inspection, the tissues are saturated with compounds that attack mammalian biology. Ingestion triggers a rapid physiological decline. Nausea strikes first. Vomiting follows as the body attempts to purge the foreign agent. The kidneys face extreme strain filtering the crystallizing acid. In severe contamination events, the metabolic shock can be fatal. On the surface, it appears to be a lush, wholesome vegetable. But inside the leaf, a potent chemical defense mechanism awaits. The risk profile increases due to visual mimicry. Children or livestock see large, glossy vegetation. They assume it is safe forage. During the chaos of a mass harvest, identification becomes difficult. Stalks and leaves mix in the collection bins. To prevent accidents, the grower must treat the foliage as toxic waste from the moment of extraction. Mistakes were not an option. The separation process happens outdoors. The blade severs the leaf immediately after cutting the stalk. The green waste drops directly into a sealed container. Bag it tightly. Never introduce this biomass to an open compost pile. Decomposition is slow, and local wildlife may access the heap, reintroducing the toxin into the food web. Drone view. A perimeter fence isolates the rhubarb bed from the rest of the cultivation zone. Physical barriers are more effective than verbal warnings. A wire mesh prevents access for curious pets or toddlers. Clear labeling identifies the specific hazard zone for any guest workers. Inside the processing facility, the workflow dictates total separation. Edible material on one side, toxic residue on the other. Rinse the stalks under high pressure to remove soil grit. Inspect the cut ends. Any trace of green leaf tissue requires surgical removal with a knife. If the stalk lacks rigidity or shows discoloration from solar radiation, cull it immediately. Soft tissue indicates degradation. The standard is firm, crisp fiber. Strict adherence to these logistics renders the crop harmless. The toxin is neutralized through exclusion. The food source is secured. One staple crop feeds billions, yet carries a hidden weapon. Why do we treat this common starch with such caution? Because the plant manufactures poison in its own defense. Third on the list is the potato. In practical agronomy, this tuber is a calorie powerhouse, capable of sustaining populations through winter. But chemically, the plant produces solanine. This is a toxic glycoalkaloid found in high concentrations within the leaves and stems. To the biological system, it is a sophisticated barrier against pests. To a mammal, it is a potent neurotoxin. The danger is not theoretical. It is woven into the cellular structure of the plant. On the surface, a nutritious vegetable. But inside the green tissues, chemical synthesis creates a hazard. Sunlight is the catalyst. When a potato grows too close to the surface, photons hit the skin. Chlorophyll develops, turning the tuber green. That color is the visual warning signal. It indicates that solanine production has spiked to dangerous levels. Ingestion leads to rapid physiological distress. Nausea sets in immediately. Headaches follow. In severe cases involving high intake, the central nervous system begins to misfire. The threshold for toxicity is remarkably low. A small child or a foraging animal needs only a minimal amount to suffer the effects. Yet, this threat is entirely preventable. Success relies on strict light management. As the plant matures, the tubers swell and naturally push upward toward the air. The grower must intervene. Mounding additional soil or applying heavy mulch creates a physical barrier against solar radiation. Up close, the darkness ensures the skin remains brown and the flesh remains safe. At harvest time, inspection is rigorous. Any tuber showing a greenish tint is rejected. There is one strict rule regarding the foliage. The leaves and stems are biological waste, not food. Internet myths sometimes suggest cooking potato greens to reduce waste. This is chemically dangerous. The toxin remains stable even after processing. Post-harvest logistics are equally critical. The storage unit must mimic an artificial cave. Cool air, low humidity, absolute darkness. Even a thin plastic bag allows enough light penetration to trigger solanine production. A perfectly good harvest can turn toxic in days if left exposed on a pantry shelf. In fast motion, a firm potato softens and pushes out white sprouts. These are signs of degradation. Routine inspection is mandatory. Softening tubers must be culled immediately. Physical barriers around the grow zone prevent accidental ingestion by livestock or pets. The protocol is rigid. Keep them buried, keep them dark, and relentlessly cut away the green. That is how you secure survival calories without the chemical risk. Cyanide. That is the chemical defense lurking inside this common garden shrub. Why cultivate a plant equipped with biological weapons? The answer is simple economics. The yield creates high-value medicinal syrups, rich wines, and jams. The fourth plant demands respect. This is the elderberry. Growers value it for its massive floral displays and heavy clusters of dark, glossy fruit. But there is a catch. Nearly every structural component of this organism is toxic in its raw state. Stems, leaves, and root systems contain cyanogenic glycosides. This is not a passive compound. Upon ingestion, these molecules act as a binary weapon, breaking down in the gut to release cyanide directly into the bloodstream. Even the unripe berries carry this chemical load. The plant does not want to be consumed before the seeds are biologically viable. On the surface, a lush berry patch. But inside the tissue, a lethal mechanism waits for a mistake. Problems usually stem from human error or curiosity. Visually, the clusters are attractive. They turn deep purple, almost black. Children may grab a handful before the chemical conversion is complete. Pets might chew on fallen branches rich in toxins. Even experienced growers make mistakes. A quick taste of a raw berry during harvest to check for sweetness. A syrup that was not heated to the critical temperature. The biological reaction is immediate. The consequences are severe, sudden nausea, violent vomiting, muscle cramping. In higher doses, the nervous system faces critical stress. To cultivate this crop safely, you need strict protocols. This is not a casual garden snack. It is an industrial processing crop. You can reduce the risk by establishing rigid rules for harvest and preparation. Harvesting requires precision. Only select fruit that has turned a deep, uniform color and is soft to the touch. Remove the biomass carefully. Stems and tiny green caps are inedible and dangerous. Strip the fruit into containers. Up close, the difference between a ripe berry and a toxic green one is obvious. Do not mix them. Heat is the only neutralizer. Raw consumption is forbidden. The berries must undergo thermal treatment. A full rolling boil is non-negotiable. The heat denatures the cyanogenic glycosides, breaking the chemical bonds and rendering the toxin inert. This transforms a biological hazard into a safe food source. Waste management is equally critical. Do not throw stems or leaves into the compost pile where pets might find them. The compounds persist. Instead, seal all green waste in heavy-duty bags for disposal. The goal is total removal from the biological cycle of the garden. Strategic placement reduces liability. Plant elderberries far from pet runs or children's play zones. Create a physical buffer. If outsiders or workers are present, install clear warning signage. Label every shrub. Remind everyone on site that raw parts are unsafe. Consider defensive infrastructure. During the ripening phase, wrap the shrubs in netting. This serves a dual purpose. It prevents birds from stealing the yield, but it also stops casual snacking and catches falling debris before it hits the ground. Elderberry is a productive machine when treated correctly. Harvest at peak ripeness. Cook every batch until the chemistry changes. Keep stems and leaves out of the kitchen entirely. With these protocols, you extract the medicine without the poison. One specific compound separates medicine from poison. That is the reality of cultivating yarrow. While keeping your household safe is the primary objective, this plant demands a higher level of vigilance. To the casual observer, yarrow is merely a pollinator magnet with feathery decorative foliage. But inside the cellular structure, the chemistry is volatile. The plant produces thujone. In small doses, it acts as a biological defense mechanism. However, in high concentrations, This compound becomes a neurotoxin. Why does a popular garden staple carry such a heavy warning label? It comes down to potency. The toxicity is not limited to insects. It affects mammals. Pets that chew on the fibrous stems or ingest the flowers face immediate digestive distress. The risk profile increases significantly for humans with sensitive skin. This is not a passive plant. It creates an active chemical barrier. Under the midday sun, the plant's metabolism accelerates. Essential oils concentrate on the surface of the leaves. If bare skin brushes against this foliage, the reaction is swift. Phototoxicity kicks in. The skin reddens and blisters. It is a chemical burn disguised as an allergy. The danger is highest during the harvest or trimming process, specifically when temperatures rise and the plant oils are most viscous. In the kitchen, the margin for error is slim. Novice growers often treat yarrow like common mint. They brew dark, concentrated infusions, unaware of the chemical load. But dosing is a mathematical equation, not a guessing game. A slight miscalculation turns a generic remedy into a hazard. There is one nuance here regarding identification. In the early stages of growth, yarrow mimics highly toxic cousins like poison hemlock. Without flowers, the visual data is confusing. One mistake in the field can lead to catastrophic results. Risks are mitigated through strict protocols. Protective gear is mandatory. Long sleeves and synthetic gloves create a physical barrier against the oils. This is not just gardening. It is hazardous material handling on a small scale. Always wash exposed skin immediately after contact to neutralize the compounds. Physical zoning is critical. Isolate these clumps from high-traffic zones where children play or domestic animals roam. Install clear markers. A simple stake labeled with a warning ensures that untrained helpers do not mistake the leaves for tea ingredients. Learn the biological markers. Look for the fern-like texture of the leaves. Observe the flat-topped inflorescences consisting of dozens of tiny white or pastel florets. Crush a leaf to release the distinct, sharp aromatic compounds. If the identification is not 100% certain, do not cut. On the surface, it looks like a static flower, but underneath, it is an aggressive colonizer. The plant produces seeds that disperse by wind and settle in vegetable beds. A volunteer yarrow plant in a salad patch is a contamination risk. It must be uprooted immediately to prevent accidental mixing with edible crops. Yarrow is a functional tool in the landscape. It stabilizes soil and supports the ecosystem. But it requires a disciplined approach. Label every planting site. Treat the harvest with caution. When you respect the chemistry, the garden remains secure. One single root fragment, that is all it takes to spark a biological invasion in your garden beds. The sixth plant demands a strict safety protocol, comfrey. In practical agronomy, this species holds a dual reputation. Growers value it as a dynamic accumulator. Its deep taproots mine the subsoil for minerals, pulling up calcium, potassium, and phosphorus. When the leaves decay, they release these nutrients back into the topsoil, acting as a highly efficient green manure factory. Why does this botanical engine carry such a high risk? Because the biological cost is toxicity. Upon closer inspection of the chemical composition, comfrey tissues are saturated with pyrrolizidine alkaloids. These are not mild irritants, they are cumulative toxins. When ingested, these compounds target the liver, causing gradual venous occlusion. The damage does not appear immediately. It builds up over months or years, often leading to irreversible failure. On the surface, a lush, hairy leaf rich in biomass. But inside, a chemical defense system that is dangerous to mammals. The risk is not limited to tea drinkers. Absorption occurs through the dermis. If you apply a comfrey poultice to broken skin or an open wound, the alkaloids enter the bloodstream directly. They bypass the digestive filtration entirely. This is why health authorities issue strict warnings against internal consumption and advise extreme caution, even with external applications. In a domestic production zone, the danger manifests in two distinct logistics failures. First, the processing error. Enthusiastic growers often brew teas or tinctures without understanding the dosage or the chemical load. They seek health benefits, but inadvertently administer a slow-acting toxin. Second, the territorial expansion. Comfrey is an aggressive colonizer. Its survival strategy relies on rapid regeneration. If you till the soil and chop a root into 5 pieces, you do not kill the plant. You create 5 new clones. The root system acts like a hydra. Within 1 season, a controlled patch can transform into an unmanageable thicket. This expansion compromises the safety of the entire plot. The foliage looks remarkably generic. When mixed into a vegetable bed, a young comfrey leaf is easily mistaken for spinach or other edible greens. Identification errors happen in seconds. A handful of the wrong leaves ends up in a salad. A pet consumes trimmings left on the grass. The margin for error is 0. Mitigation requires physical engineering. Establish hard boundaries. Do not plant comfrey directly in the ground near food crops. Isolate it. Use deep industrial containers or concrete planters where the roots cannot breach the bottom. The root tips are strong. They will drill through weak liners to reach the soil below. Visual protocols are equally important. Install durable signage. A tag reading "External use only" acts as a necessary barrier for anyone harvesting in the area. Store dried leaves in sealed, labeled jars, completely separate from culinary herbs. Handling requires protective gear. The leaves are covered in stiff, silica-rich hairs that irritate sensitive skin. Wear heavy gloves during harvest. Wash hands immediately after contact to remove sap residue. When utilizing the biomass for compost, heat is the key factor. The pile must reach high temperatures to break down the fibrous structure and neutralize any potential for regrowth. Eradication is a test of endurance. If you decide to remove the plant, a simple shovel is insufficient. You must excavate the central crown and chase every lateral runner. Dig deep. Remove every visible fiber. In fast motion, you will likely see new shoots emerging from the disturbed earth weeks later. The soil holds on to the genetic material. Repeat the digging process until the root energy reserves are fully exhausted. Comfrey serves a purpose as a biomass generator and a topical resource, but it is not a benign herb. It is a potent biological tool. Treat it with rigorous containment and absolute respect. That is how you utilize the resource without poisoning the user. One chemical compound separates food from poison. The 7th crop demands absolute caution. It is the lima bean. These legumes are incredibly productive. They offer dense calories and high protein. But biology exacts a price for this abundance. Why is a common vegetable dangerous? The raw seed is a chemical storage unit. Deep within the cellular tissue, the plant produces cyanogenic glycosides. This is a defense mechanism. When the bean is chewed or crushed, the cell walls rupture. The compounds interact. They release hydrogen cyanide directly into the digestive system. The reaction is immediate. It begins with nausea. A severe headache follows. Dizziness sets in as oxygen transport is inhibited. In extreme cases involving high consumption, the poisoning becomes critical. There is a nuance here. Older traditional cultivars often carry a heavy toxic load. But modern agriculture has not eliminated the threat entirely. Even current varieties sold in stores are unsafe in their raw state. The biology remains potent. Home growers often face trouble through simple oversight. A child spots a green pod in the garden. It looks like a harmless snap pea. A pet finds a dropped seed in the dirt. The ingestion happens in seconds. The risk extends to the kitchen. Speed is the enemy here. A cook might saute soaked beans without a thermal treatment, or they utilize a slow cooker. This device is particularly deceptive. At low temperatures, the machine warms the bean. It makes the texture soft, but the heat is insufficient to break the molecular bonds of the toxin. The poison remains active in the finished dish. Dry beans in open bowls pose a similar risk. Curious hands reach in. A raw tasting occurs. Mistakes are not an option. You can neutralize the threat with strict thermal physics. Treat every raw lima bean as inedible matter. The protocol is rigid. Submerge the beans in water. Bring the pot to a violent rolling boil. In fast motion, the water churns and steam rises. This temperature must be maintained for at least 10 minutes. This is the critical window. The heat destroys the enzymes. Only after this initial boil should you lower the heat to finish the process. If a slow cooker is the destination, the stove comes first. Pre-boil the biomass. Transfer it only when the chemistry is neutralized. Never taste a bean that is firm or undercooked. Logistics extend to storage. Harvested pods must be secured. Dried beans go into sealed containers. A clear label is necessary to prevent confusion. When sourcing genetics, prioritize modern selections from certified companies. These are bred for lower glycoside levels. If you save seeds, accuracy is vital. A mislabeled jar from 3 years ago could contain a high cyanide variety. Do not mix unknown genetics into the food supply. Inspect the harvest closely. Visual feedback is key. Discard any beans with mold, off smells, or signs of insect intrusion. On the surface, it is a simple legume, but inside, it demands respect. Boil first. Cook thoroughly. Isolate the raw product. Follow these thermal rules, and the crop provides safe, abundant nutrition. One rigid shell. Inside lies a chemical weapon designed by nature. The apricot tree is a prolific producer of calories, generating kilograms of sweet fruit to attract biological dispersers. But the seed itself has a different objective. It wants to survive, not to be digested. To ensure this, it protects itself with a potent defense mechanism. Inside the stone-hard pit sits a kernel loaded with amygdalin. This is not a snack. It is a precursor to poison. Why is this dangerous? When the kernel is crushed and enters the digestive tract, enzymes trigger a rapid breakdown. The amygdalin converts into hydrogen cyanide. This is a distinct biological threat. The toxin interferes with the body's ability to use oxygen. Even small amounts disrupt the system. The reaction is immediate. First comes nausea, then a throbbing headache and dizziness. Confusion sets in as the brain struggles for oxygen. For an adult male, the tolerance is higher, but for a child or a household pet, the mathematics of survival change drastically. Their smaller body mass makes them hypersensitive to the toxin. A dose that causes a headache in an adult can overwhelm a smaller organism completely. The risk creates a strict boundary between food and waste. Problems usually begin with human curiosity. Upon closer inspection, the pit looks like an almond. Misinformation exacerbates the danger. Online sources frequently cite the existence of vitamin B17 or claim the kernels have health benefits. These assertions lack rigorous scientific backing. In practical agronomy, the toxicity is a proven fact, while the benefits remain theoretical. Nature locked this door for a reason. The shell is engineered to be impenetrable. Cracking it requires a hammer or a vise. Yet, accidents happen. Children imitate adults cracking walnuts. A dog finds a discarded pit on the floor and gnaws through the casing. The release of cyanide follows. To prevent this, the protocol is binary. Eat the fruit, destroy the seed. There is no middle ground. Disposal requires strict logistics. The pits are not organic matter suitable for recycling. They are hazardous waste. Placing them in a compost pile is a tactical error. Even a biologically active compost heap generating heat up to 140 degrees Fahrenheit often fails to neutralize the kernel. The woody shell acts as a thermal shield. If the pit remains intact, it survives the composting process. Later, when the compost is spread over vegetable beds, the toxic seeds resurface. If crushed, the residues can leach cyanide into soil intended for food crops. The solution is total isolation. During the harvest, the kitchen becomes a processing plant. When making syrups or drying fruit, the workflow must be disciplined. Pits are extracted and immediately placed in a sealed bag. This bag goes directly into the external trash, bypassing the green waste cycle entirely. The separation must be absolute. Storage creates another layer of risk. Harvested fruit kept in crates can rot and split, exposing the inner seed to curious animals. Security means keeping the stockpile elevated and monitored. When distributing the surplus to neighbors, the transfer of biomass comes with a mandatory warning. The stone is inedible. The apricot tree remains a valuable asset. It converts sunlight into sugar and fiber with high efficiency. Proper pruning yields massive caloric output, but the core of the fruit holds a dormant threat. By treating the kernel as a biological hazard, the grower secures the harvest. The sweetness is utilized. The risk is eliminated. 2 deadly chemicals, that is what hides inside one of the world's most important roots. We move to crop number 9, cassava. In the tropics, this plant is a caloric heavyweight. It produces massive amounts of starch in soil where other crops fail. Why grow a plant that can kill you? Because it offers survival economics. The yield is high, the tubers are dense, but biology demands a price for this productivity. Every tissue of the plant contains cyanogenic glycosides. On the surface, it appears to be a harmless root vegetable, but inside, the chemistry is armed. These glycosides are precursors to poison. When the cells are crushed, chewed, or cut, a chemical reaction triggers. The compounds break down and release hydrogen cyanide. In the human body, this halts cellular respiration. The symptoms strike fast. Dizziness spins the room. Headaches pound. In severe cases, the body shuts down. Children are the most vulnerable due to their lower body mass. Agronomists divide the crop into 2 categories, bitter and sweet. Do not be misled. Even the sweet varieties are unsafe in their raw state. In practical agronomy, the danger usually hits the novice grower. They treat cassava like a common potato. They slice it raw. They throw it into a frying pan without a pre-boil. This is a critical error. A farmer might nibble a raw piece during harvest to check the texture. That small act introduces toxin to the bloodstream. The leaves are also utilized as greens in traditional diets, but they require intense heat to break down the compounds. Pets face the same risk. A dog digs up a stored root, chews the flesh, and faces a chemical attack. Safe consumption relies on strict processing logistics. It starts at the prep table. The knife must go deep. You do not just skim the surface, you must peel thickly. Remove the rough outer bark. Cut away the pinkish subcutaneous layer where the cyanogens concentrate. The white flesh must be exposed completely. Rinse the starch away with water. Then, execute a thermal override. Submerge the roots in boiling water. This is not a gentle simmer. It must be a rolling boil. Maintain this intensity for at least 15 to 20 minutes. The heat volatilizes the cyanide. The gas escapes with the steam. There is one nuance here. The water becomes toxic waste. Never reuse the boiling liquid. Pour it down the drain. Continue cooking the root until a fork slides through the fiber without resistance. Do not test the flavor halfway through. The heat must finish its work before the food touches your tongue. For the leaves, the protocol is similar. Discard the fibrous stems. Chop the green matter into fine particles. Boil thoroughly to neutralize the chemistry. Logistics extend to the field. Select cultivars bred for lower cyanide levels. Label the rows clearly. A visitor might mistake the crop for a raw snack. In storage, keep harvested roots behind locked doors, away from animals. Drying poses a separate challenge. Dehydrating raw chips concentrates the poison unless fermentation is used. This is a complex biological fermentation process used by traditional cultures to reduce toxicity. Without that specific knowledge, skip the drying rack. Cassava feeds millions. It is a survival engine in the right climate, but it is not a casual hobby crop. If the chemistry seems too risky, stick to potatoes or sweet potatoes. The margin for error here is slim. Respect the heat. Respect the boiling time. That is how you turn a toxic root into safe energy. Five raw beans. That is the toxic threshold for an adult human. The 10th crop requires extreme caution. The red kidney bean. Why is such a common staple potentially lethal? The answer lies in chemistry. These seeds contain a specific lectin called phytohemagglutinin. In a fully cooked state, they are a high-value source of protein and fiber. But in their raw form, they are a biological trap. The lectin attacks the stomach lining and disrupts cellular function. Even a small handful of improperly cooked beans triggers a violent reaction: intense nausea, vomiting, severe diarrhea. The body rejects the toxin within 3 to 4 hours. The margin for error is non-existent. On the surface, it looks like a harmless pantry ingredient, but inside, it holds a chemical defense mechanism waiting for a trigger. Home cooks often fail at the first hurdle. They rely on modern appliances like slow cookers. This is a critical logistical error. The device warms the water, but it rarely reaches the necessary thermal spike. Low heat does not destroy the lectin. In fact, holding the beans at 80 degrees Celsius actually amplifies the toxicity 5-fold compared to raw beans. The pot becomes a vessel of poison rather than sustenance. Tasting a bean early to check for texture is another mistake. The toxin remains active until the water has boiled hard. However, the fix is purely mechanical. The neutralization process requires strict adherence to physics. First, the dry beans must soak. Water penetrates the hard outer shell, swelling the starch. Once soaked, the water must be drained. It contains leached toxins. Do not use it for soup stocks. Pour it down the drain. Close up. Bubbles break the surface violently. Place the beans in fresh water and bring the pot to a full rolling boil. This temperature must be maintained for at least 10 minutes. This is not about cooking for flavor, it is about thermal decontamination. Only after this 10-minute aggressive heat treatment does the molecular structure of the phytohemagglutinin break down, rendering the beans safe for human digestion. The danger is neutralized. Now, you can transfer the contents to a slow cooker or lower the flame to a simmer until the texture softens. Do not rely on a warm setting to do the heavy lifting. The initial heat shock is mandatory. Safety extends beyond the stove. In the pantry, clear labeling is essential. A child might mistake a raw bean for candy. A pet might find a dropped seed on the floor. The consequences are immediate. Store dry inventory in rigid sealed containers. High shelves are safer than low cabinets. Never snack on raw or undercooked seeds. Mistakes are not an option here. If a batch tastes suspicious or the beans remain crunchy, do not attempt to salvage it. Throw it away. The cost of medical intervention outweighs the price of a bag of beans. Respect the high heat requirement, avoid low temperature starts, and you unlock a cheap, calorie-dense fuel source for the long term. Proper cooking guarantees meals without the unpleasant surprise of lectin poisoning. 3 specific alkaloids. That is all it takes to shut down the nervous system. The 11th plant to eliminate from the perimeter is nightshade. Specifically, the deadly and bittersweet varieties. These are not passive garden decorations, they are chemical stockpiles. While the leaves are glossy and the berries appear attractive, the internal composition is lethal. The tissues contain high concentrations of atropine, scopolamine, and solanine. These compounds act as a ruthless defense mechanism against predation. The biological mechanism is aggressive. Upon closer inspection, the berry skin is thin and easily broken. Once ingested, the alkaloids enter the bloodstream and attack the parasympathetic nervous system. The reaction is rapid. The mouth becomes dry as saliva production halts. Pupils dilate until vision blurs. The heart rate accelerates to dangerous levels. The brain suffers from confusion and vivid hallucinations. In severe cases, the respiratory system fails, leading to life-threatening poisoning. Children and animals are the primary casualties. The berries are shiny, sweet-looking, and resemble edible fruits. It is a biological trap. Confusion arises because the taxonomy is broad. The word nightshade covers a massive botanical family that includes staple crops. Tomatoes, peppers, eggplants, and potatoes feed millions of people daily. These vegetables are safe when harvested and prepared correctly. However, the ornamental or weedy cousins are distinct. They possess none of the nutritional benefits and all of the toxicity. Visual identification is critical for safety. Deadly nightshade typically displays bell-shaped flowers with a purple tint. Its fruit consists of singular black berries. Bittersweet nightshade operates differently. It is a vining plant with purple, star-shaped flowers. In accelerated motion, the ripening process is visible. The berries shift from green to orange, and finally to a bright, warning red. Both varieties are opportunistic. They appear along fences, establish themselves in hedges, colonize compost edges, or thrive in damp margins. They slip into established garden beds, hiding under the canopy of desirable plants. Removal requires strict logistical discipline. This is not standard weeding. Direct skin contact can transfer toxins. Wear heavy gloves and long sleeves before touching the foliage. Avoid touching the face during the operation. Tools must be washed thoroughly immediately after use to remove chemical residue. Fire is not an option. Do not burn the prunings. Combustion releases the alkaloids into the smoke, creating an inhalation hazard. The disposal method must be total containment. Bag all plant parts, including the roots and every single berry. Seal the bags. Place them in household trash destined for a landfill. Never introduce this material to the compost pile. The risk of reseeding or contaminating the soil is too high. On the surface, a fallen berry looks like organic debris, but inside, it is a dormant threat waiting for rain. If berries have dropped to the ground, collect them with precision. This prevents local wildlife from consuming them and stops the cycle of regrowth. Prevention is the only robust defense strategy. Patrol the garden edges 2 or 3 times each season. Identify and remove seedlings early, before the root system establishes a grip on the clay. Educate everyone on the property. Teach family members that glossy black or bright red berries on unfamiliar vines are strictly prohibited. If the goal is dark, dramatic foliage, safe alternatives exist. Nature offers other options without the chemical risk. Plant dark-leaved coleus. Use purple basil in sectors with high solar exposure. Install heuchera in the shaded zones. These plants provide the visual aesthetic without the hidden danger. History shows that nightshade has been used in medicine, but only under rigorous professional control and precise dosage. It does not belong in an uncontrolled environment. Skip the planting. Remove the wild volunteers immediately. Keep the landscape focused on ornamentals and edibles that offer utility without the threat of toxicity. One single seed pod holds enough chemical payload to shut down a nervous system. Why do growers allow this dangerous specimen to take root? The visuals are deceptive. Striking trumpet flowers unfold in the evening, and the architectural structure adds drama to the landscape. But the aesthetics hide a biological trap. The plant is Datura, also known as thorn apple or Jimson weed. On the surface, a decorative botanical specimen, but inside, a chemical weapon factory. Every cell of this plant is saturated with powerful tropane alkaloids. Atropine and scopolamine flow through the vascular system from the white roots to the petal tips. The mechanism of toxicity is aggressive. Ingestion triggers a systematic collapse of the body's cooling and nervous functions. The heart rate accelerates uncontrollably. The internal temperature rises. Hallucinations turn into severe delirium as the brain loses its grip on reality. In critical cases, the outcome is fatal. The risk profile is highest for smaller biological targets. Children and pets do not see danger. They see a geometric curiosity. The spiny pods look like toys. Inside, dry seeds rattle, inviting inspection. Trouble often starts with simple, tactile exploration. Gardeners sometimes harvest these pods for dried arrangements, unaware that they are bringing a hazardous substance into the home. There is a nuance here regarding territory. Datura is an opportunist. It does not wait to be planted. It invades vegetable rows and the edges of compost heaps. A stray seed lands in nutrient-rich soil. Within days, a seedling emerges. It mimics harmless crops or common volunteers. A grower might mistake it for a useful plant, allowing the root system to establish deep in the production bed. Removal requires hazardous material protocols. Skin contact transfers the alkaloids. Protective gear is mandatory. Thick gloves and long sleeves create a physical barrier against the sap. Touching the face or eyes during this process is strictly forbidden. The extraction must be precise. Do not shake the plant. The seed pods are fragile containers. One sudden movement scatters the toxic load across the soil, seeding the next generation of weeds. Up close, the seed capsule is armed with spikes to deter herbivores. Disposal is final. Composting is a critical error. The toxins persist in the breakdown process. Burning is even worse. The smoke carries the vaporized alkaloids directly into the lungs. The entire biomass, roots, stalks, leaves, and pods must go into a sealed plastic bag. It belongs in the landfill, buried under tons of waste where it cannot cycle back into the ecosystem. Sanitation of tools follows immediately. Wash hands and clothing to strip away any invisible residue. If a pod ruptures during extraction, immediate containment is necessary. Water the area to bind the seeds to the mud. Monitor the patch for weeks. Any green shoot must be culled instantly. Prevention relies on active observation. Patrol the perimeter after rain. Remove young plants before they develop reproductive organs. If evening fragrance is the operational goal, switch the biological asset. Moonflower vines or Nicotiana provide the scent without the extreme toxicity profile. Even then, keep them labeled to prevent confusion. The garden remains a safe zone for all inhabitants. One single leaf, that is the dosage limit for serious toxicity. Why do gardeners cultivate a potential biological weapon? The answer lies in the visual impact. This is the 13th plant on our danger list, the foxglove. Its tall spires of bell-shaped blooms dominate the vertical space of any plot. But inside the cellular structure, a potent chemical factory is at work. Every part of this plant contains cardiac glycosides. These are the same heavy compounds used to synthesize the prescription drug digitalis. The plant does not distinguish between a patient and a victim. Ingestion of even a micro amount triggers a rapid biological cascade. The symptoms strike the system hard: nausea, violent vomiting. The heart rhythm becomes erratic and unstable. In severe cases, the cardiac muscle simply stops beating. The mechanism is lethal. That means the same structure that attracts pollinators acts as a loaded trap for mammals. Mistakes were not an option. The danger usually stems from visual confusion. Young foxglove leaves are green, textured and slightly fuzzy. Up close, they look nearly identical to edible greens like comfrey or borage. A gardener working fast might grab the wrong bunch during harvest. The salad becomes a hazard. Pets are also at risk. They chew on vegetation near the ground level, unaware of the chemical defense system. Even simple maintenance carries a cost. If the sap contacts human skin, it causes irritation and rashes. To manage this risk, strict zoning is required. Label every specimen clearly. Create a physical buffer zone between these toxic ornamentals and your caloric crops. Never plant them along high traffic paths where children run or animals patrol. Treat maintenance like a hazmat operation. Wear thick gloves during pruning, transplanting, or deadheading. Once the work is done, scrub hands thoroughly to remove invisible residue. In fast motion, the flowers fade and seed pods swell. On the surface, it looks like dry plant matter, but inside, thousands of seeds are ready to colonize your soil. Do not throw this debris into the compost pile. The seeds will often survive the decomposition heat and contaminate future soil mixes. Instead, cut the spent stalks carefully. Place them in heavy-duty plastic bags. Seal them tight. Send them to the landfill. The goal is to prevent self-sown seedlings from infiltrating food beds or animal enclosures. If the risk is too high, swap the genetics. Snapdragons or penstemon mimic the vertical architecture and color palette. They offer the same visual data without the cardiac threat. But if you keep foxglove, treat it like a professional handles a volatile reagent. Beautiful to observe, but dangerous to touch. Foxglove has remained in cultivation for centuries, but awareness is the only safety mechanism. Label the danger zones. Protect your skin. Keep the toxins isolated. That is how you maintain a vibrant landscape without endangering the biological systems of those who walk through it. One single alkaloid turns this specimen into a biological hazard. Why risk planting it? The structure is elegant, but the chemistry is incompatible with human safety. The 14th entry on the restricted list is monkshood. Botanists know it as aconite or wolfsbane. It erects tall, rigid spikes of color. The flowers are deep blue and purple. They fit perfectly into the geometry of a cool border. On the surface, a decorative element. But inside the cells, a neurotoxin waits for contact. The active substance is aconitine. It does not need to be swallowed to terminate life. The molecule is small enough to pass through the pores of the skin. Ingestion leads to mortality. But even dermal absorption is enough to trigger a crisis. First, the nerve endings fire incorrectly. Numbness takes over the fingers. Tingling spreads up the arm. Then the heart rhythm falters. The respiratory muscles paralyze. In a domestic setting, the threat is invisible. A gardener separates the root clumps. They wear no gloves. A hand wipes a brow. The toxin enters the system. Up close, the severed stem bleeds a clear fluid. This sap drips onto the workbench or the kitchen counter. It remains active on surfaces. The shape of the flower resembles a helmet. This geometry attracts children. Pets chew on the lower leaves. The plant defends itself against all mammals. Even after death, the defense holds. Dried stems in an arrangement retain their toxicity. A withered stalk is not safe debris. It is a chemical agent. Treat the area like a contamination site. Cotton gloves are useless here. Nitrile is required. Long sleeves and closed footwear provide a second layer of armor. Open cuts on the skin act as direct highways for the poison. One mistake changes everything. Touching the face is a violation of protocol. Upon completion, every tool must be scrubbed. Skin must be washed. Bringing monkshood indoors creates a contamination zone. Sap residue on a dining surface can transfer to food. The biomass cannot go into the compost pile. The toxin does not break down fast enough. All trimmings go into sealed bags. The destination is the landfill. Isolation is key. Distance must be maintained from vegetable production, play zones, and animal paths. A label with a toxic warning is mandatory. It protects the uninformed guest. If root divisions are transferred to another grower, written safety data must accompany the biological material. To eliminate the threat, excavation is necessary. The spade must remove the entire crown. The soil is checked for remnant root fragments. Resprouts are likely. Field alternatives are available. Delphinium, larkspur, and veronica provide the same vertical blue accents. They are safer, though basic gloves are still recommended. Monk's hood is a botanical weapon. In a family sector, the danger exceeds the aesthetic value. Safety dictates the choice of a different species. One single leaf. That is enough biological material to disrupt the human cardiac rhythm permanently. This is oleander. In the world of botany, it is a survival machine disguised as an ornamental shrub. It thrives where other plants wither, dominating landscapes with minimal water. Why do municipalities and homeowners plant this biological hazard? It is nearly indestructible. The shrub tolerates exhaust fumes, compacted soil, and extreme heat. But this resilience comes with a heavy chemical cost. On the surface, it is a masterpiece of landscape architecture. The leaves are dark green, leathery, and rigid. Clusters of pink, white, or red flowers bloom with aggressive vitality. But inside, the plant manufactures a potent defense cocktail. Every cell contains cardiac glycosides. The toxin is not localized. It saturates the roots, the stems, the nectar, and the sap. Upon closer inspection, a broken stem oozes a thick, sticky white fluid. This substance interferes with the sodium-potassium pumps in animal cells. If ingested, the heart muscle loses its ability to contract rhythmically. The shutdown is systemic. Urban planners favor the species for its ability to create dense visual barriers along driveways and public paths. This creates a dangerous friction point. A child snaps a twig. A pet chews on a fallen branch. The transfer of toxins happens in seconds. A critical error often occurs during disposal. Fire does not destroy the poison. When dried branches are burned, the chemical structure survives the heat and binds to carbon particles. The smoke becomes an aerosolized weapon. Inhaling the fumes delivers the toxin directly into the lungs and bloodstream, causing severe respiratory distress and cardiac instability. Maintenance requires the protocols of a hazardous material operation. Thick rubber gloves and eye protection are mandatory. Long sleeves must cover all exposed skin to prevent dermal absorption. The sap is persistent. Tools used on these branches must be chemically decontaminated or kept in strict quarantine. The disposal logistics are rigid. Composting is forbidden. The toxins do not break down in a standard organic pile and will contaminate the resulting soil. All biomass must be collected immediately. The debris is sealed in heavy-duty plastic bags. It leaves the property as hazardous trash destined for a sealed landfill where it cannot leach into the water table. Hygiene is non-negotiable. After any contact, skin must be scrubbed with soap and water. Clothing that brushed against the foliage requires immediate laundering to remove invisible residue. Location is the primary variable for safety. Planting this species near vegetable beds or patios introduces unnecessary risk. In high-traffic zones, the danger outweighs the aesthetic value. Safer alternatives exist for the same climate zones. Hibiscus offers similar vibrant color without the cardiac risk. Bottle brush provides the necessary evergreen structure. The choice is binary. Maintain a strict exclusion zone around the toxin or remove the root ball entirely to secure the perimeter. Safety is the priority. One glass of milk. In the 19th century, that was enough to kill a healthy settler. Why did entire families perish across the American Midwest? They drank milk contaminated by a specific pasture weed. We are looking at white snakeroot. Up close, the plant appears benign. It produces clusters of small, fuzzy blooms that emerge in late summer. The aesthetic is gentle, but this plant contains a chemical weapon called trematol. This is an unsaturated alcohol that persists through digestion. When livestock graze on the foliage, the toxin does not break down. It concentrates in the animal's milk. History calls the resulting condition milk sickness. The biological impact is immediate: trembling, severe nausea, systemic weakness. In the worst scenarios, the metabolic system collapses, leading to death. This applies to humans and household pets alike. Direct ingestion of the raw plant material is equally fatal. White snake root does not wait to be planted. It is an aggressive opportunist. The plant migrates from the forest edge into domestic territory. It targets areas of partial shade and disturbed soil. You will find it lurking behind tool sheds, along fence lines, or near compost heaps. These are the neglected corners that property owners rarely inspect. There is one nuance here. New growers often confuse it with boneset or harmless native herbs. Identification requires a clinical eye. Look at the stem structure. The leaves are heart-shaped with serrated, toothed edges. They grow strictly opposite one another. Upon closer inspection, the flower heads form flat-topped white clouds. If visual confirmation is difficult, consult a technical extension office. Guessing is a dangerous gamble. Once the target is identified, the protocol shifts to biohazard removal. Skin contact must be zero. Wear heavy synthetic gloves and long sleeves. Do not simply pull the stem. The root system acts as an anchor and must be excavated completely. This biomass is toxic waste. It cannot go into the compost pile. Trematol remains active in decaying matter and will contaminate the soil mixture. Instead, seal the entire plant in heavy plastic bags. Send it directly to the landfill. Hygiene is the final line of defense. Scrub all tools thoroughly after the operation. Patrol the shaded boundaries of the property. Locate young plants and remove them before they can generate seeds. Education is critical here. Instruct every member of the household to avoid unidentified white blooms. On the surface, it looks delicate, but inside, it is a biological threat waiting for a mistake. Eliminate it without hesitation. That is how you secure the perimeter against a hidden invader. And moving forward, we reach the 17th plant on our list. One bite is enough to close the throat forever. The locals call it the little apple of death. The 16th entry on our list is the manchineel tree, widely considered the most dangerous plant on earth. Why does this tree exist? Its goal is absolute defense. It does not typically grow in manicured gardens. Instead, it dominates the sandy soils of tropical coastlines and mangrove swamps, sometimes planted intentionally as a windbreak against hurricanes. But the biological cost of this protection is extreme. Every single component of this organism is saturated with a potent cocktail of toxins. The bark, the leaves, the roots, and the sap all carry a chemical weapon. Upon closer inspection, the danger becomes invisible. The sap contains formyl esters, strong skin irritants that function like chemical acids. A single drop on the skin does not just cause a rash, it creates blistering burns that can last for weeks. If this milky white substance touches the eyes, it burns the cornea, leading to intense pain and temporary or permanent blindness. The mechanism is immediate and aggressive. On the surface, the fruit looks like a harmless crabapple, but inside, it is a biological trap. The small greenish-yellow sphere smells sweet and looks inviting to the untrained eye. This visual deception is fatal for tourists and children. Ingestion triggers severe swelling of the throat and mouth. Swallowing becomes impossible. In high enough doses, the toxins shut down the respiratory system, leading to death. Nature devised a cunning move to spread the poison. You do not even need to touch the tree to get hurt. Standing underneath the canopy during a rainstorm is a critical error. Rainwater washes over the glossy leaves, dissolving the surface toxins. When these droplets fall onto a human below, they burn the skin just like the pure sap. The water does not dilute the poison, it acts as a delivery system. The threat extends to the air itself. Do not attempt to burn the wood. Combustion releases the toxins into the smoke. Inhaling this gray fog causes severe respiratory distress, damaging the lungs and irritating the eyes to the point of blindness. Even handling dry, dead branches can trigger a reaction. The wood remains hazardous long after the tree is cut. If you encounter a manchineel on your territory, standard gardening tools are useless. This is a hazmat situation. Do not prune it. Do not cut it. The sawdust alone is a respiratory hazard. Contact local authorities or professionals trained in hazardous plant removal. These crews often wear full protective suits and respirators to dismantle the tree safely. Until the team arrives, isolation is the only strategy. Establish a perimeter, use bright barrier tape and clear warning signs to alert anyone approaching the area. Children and pets must be kept hundreds of feet away. Never use the wood for construction or campfires. Never leave the fallen fruit on the ground where it might attract curious hands or hungry animals. Identification is your primary defense. Look for the smooth gray bark. Observe the shiny oval leaves. Note the small apple-like fruit. If you live in a tropical region, consult your local agricultural office to map out known locations of this species. This is not a plant to study up close. It requires a strictly zero-contact policy. Distance is the only thing that guarantees safety. One drop of sap. That is all it takes to trigger a catastrophic biological failure. The 18th plant on the removal list is water hemlock. It is consistently ranked as the most toxic flora in North America. This species does not grow randomly. It hunts for moisture. You will find it colonizing wet ditches, the muddy banks of creeks, and the soggy edges of unmanaged gardens. The threat is invisible to the naked eye. It comes from cicotoxin, a volatile neurotoxin. Why is this compound so feared? Because it attacks the central nervous system directly. The poison concentrates heavily in the rootstock and the lower stem segments. Ingestion triggers a biological cascade. Seizures begin almost immediately, often with zero warning signs. Even a microscopic amount acts as a fatal dose. This makes the plant an extreme hazard for pets and small children who wander near drainage paths or play areas. On the surface, it looks like a harmless vegetable, but inside, it carries a lethal chemical payload. Confusion is the primary cause of accidents. Water hemlock belongs to the Apiaceae family. To the untrained observer, it mimics the appearance of wild carrot, parsnip, or edible herbs. Identification requires a clinical eye. Look closely at the stems. They are hollow and marked with distinct purple or mottled streaks. The flower clusters form a compound umbrella shape. There is a specific geometric flaw in the leaves. Upon closer inspection, the leaf veins end at the notches of the serration, not at the tips. This is a critical botanical distinction. The root system hides the final conformation. It consists of chambered sections. When cut, these chambers ooze a thick yellowish sap. This fluid is the raw neurotoxin. If identification is not 100% certain, treat any similar plant near water as a biohazard until confirmed. Removal is not a gardening task. It is a hazmat operation. Protective gear is mandatory. Wear heavy gloves, long sleeves, and full eye protection. Do not attempt to pull large plants by hand. The roots are brittle. If they snap, they release toxic sap into the soil and onto the skin. Furthermore, a broken taproot acts as a survival capsule, allowing the plant to regenerate rapidly. Use a shovel to excavate the entire root mass. The goal is to lift the biological unit in one piece, keeping soil disturbance to an absolute minimum. This biomass is dangerous waste. Bag every leaf, stem, and root immediately. Seal the bags and place them in municipal trash. Do not compost this material. The toxin persists. Never burn the debris. The smoke can carry the neurotoxin directly into the lungs. Decontamination must follow immediately. Wash all tools, gloves, and footwear. Keep pets strictly isolated from the work zone until the area is chemically inert. Prevention is a matter of hydrology and logistics. Reduce standing water to starve the habitat. Mow or trim ditch lines before the plant can produce seeds. After heavy rain, monitor low-lying spots for new sprouts. Post clear warnings for family and guests. Foraging for umbrella-shaped plants is a game of Russian roulette. If the infestation covers a large area or the terrain is difficult, do not engage. Contact a local extension service or a professional removal crew. Water hemlock has no place near a residential zone. Learn the features, execute the removal methodically, and keep the wet perimeters patrolled. The land must remain clear. Methodical removal is the only way to clear the perimeter. Wet edges must be monitored strictly to prevent any vegetative return. The 19th crop on the inventory list is the fava bean, scientifically known as the broad bean. Why is a global staple considered a biological threat? It comes down to genetics. For the majority, this legume is a dense source of calories and nitrogen. But for individuals with G6PD deficiency, the plant functions as a latent toxin. On the surface, the pod appears harmless. But inside the body, specific compounds trigger a volatile reaction known as favism. The mechanism targets red blood cells. Upon contact with the toxin, the cell walls fail. They rupture. This leads to immediate physical decline, extreme fatigue, yellowing of the skin, and critical shortness of breath. The body's oxygen transport system effectively shuts down. In severe cases, acute anemia threatens survival. The risk profile is often underestimated. In a standard plot, a grower might snap a crisp green pod. The smell is fresh and vegetal. They consume a raw bean during harvest. For a sensitive individual, this single action initiates the reaction. But the danger is not limited to ingestion. There is a nuance here regarding air quality. During the flowering season, the plants release pollen. Seen in high speed, fine particles drift from the blossoms and settle on nearby surfaces. Inhaling this dust can trigger symptoms in those with the deficiency. Mere proximity becomes a health risk. Before sowing a single seed, the biological status of the household must be confirmed. This genetic trait is more prevalent than general statistics suggest. It is frequently found in families with Mediterranean, African, or Asian lineage. If medical history is unclear, exclusion is the only safe protocol. The crop should be banned from the growing zone. Processing requires heat. Boiling water is the most effective medium to break down natural toxins. However, heat only reduces the concentration. It does not completely sanitize the bean for a G6PD positive individual. Safety protocols must be rigid. Wear gloves when handling the foliage to prevent oil absorption. Wash skin immediately after contact. Pets and children must be physically barred from the area to prevent accidental consumption of raw pods. If high protein yield is the objective, safer alternatives exist. Chickpeas and lentils provide similar nutritional value without the medical liability. Fava beans are a powerful crop, but for specific genetic profiles, they are lethal. Identify the risk, process with heat, and maintain strict control. The 20th plant carries a volatile chemical payload in its cells, wormwood. Upon closer inspection, the leaves appear covered in fine silver hairs, giving the plant a soft, velvet-like texture. This aesthetic value makes it a common choice for ornamental borders and traditional herb gardens. Historically, it serves as the primary botanical ingredient in absinthe, the green spirit famous for its potency. But there is a hidden danger here. The plant contains thujone, a potent compound that functions as a neurotoxin when concentrated. Why do home growers underestimate this risk? The misconception is that natural origins equal safety. In reality, thujone targets the central nervous system. On the surface, it is a fragrant, decorative shrub, but inside, the chemistry is aggressive. Ingesting large quantities, particularly through homemade extractions or teas, leads to rapid toxicity. The symptoms are systemic: nausea, vertigo, tremors, and in severe cases, seizures or hallucinations. The risk extends beyond human consumption. Pets exploring the garden may chew on the foliage, leading to immediate poisoning. Even the oils on the surface of the leaf can cause dermatitis. At the skin level, contact with the sap triggers irritation and rashes in sensitive individuals. Handling this specimen requires the discipline of a laboratory rather than a casual garden. It must be treated strictly as an ornamental feature. Medicinal use is dangerous without precise measurements and professional oversight. Identification is another logistical challenge. Visually, wormwood mimics edible herbs like sage or tarragon. Without clear industrial-grade labeling, a mix-up in the kitchen can lead to medical emergencies. Protective gear is mandatory. When pruning, gloves must be worn to prevent oil absorption. Hands require thorough washing immediately after contact. Disposal involves a specific biological restriction. These clippings cannot be thrown into a standard compost pile. The concentration of essential oils is high enough to act as an antimicrobial agent. Instead of rotting, the oils linger and sterilize the beneficial bacterial colonies responsible for decomposition. This halts the breakdown process for the entire pile. The biomass must be sealed in plastic bags and removed from the site entirely to prevent soil contamination. For those seeking the silver aesthetic without the toxic liability, there are safer biological alternatives. Lavender or Artemisia Powys Castle offer the same visual density and drought resistance but lack the high thujone content. Safety in a botanical environment is often a matter of physical engineering. This brings us to a critical structural protocol. Hazardous plants require perimeter control. A simple sign is often insufficient. The installation of physical barriers, rigid netting, low fencing, or elevated planting beds creates a necessary exclusion zone. These obstacles physically prevent children and animals from making accidental contact. Warning markers placed at eye level serve as a secondary layer of defense. By establishing clear boundaries and managing the flow of traffic, the risk of accidental exposure drops to near zero. The garden remains a controlled system where aesthetics do not compromise survival.